saying, oh, you have to vote for this candidate or not this. That's not what it's about. But the shock to see where the Republicans have gone is what's going on. And if we're not willing to call it out, this is going to mean trouble. Hey, my friends, and welcome back to Faith and Reason. We're going to have a packed show with you. Is Tucker Carlson becoming more Catholic? Well, his comments on the Sean Ryan show surely sound like it. In addition, what was with President Trump and the abortion remarks, tweeting out, or at least on Truth Social, that, women's reproductive rights are going to be great under his administration? It was bad, but it got much worse when J.D. Vance got into it. Gets worse still. In America now, the third largest statue, which is always Our Lady of the Rockies, has been replaced by a Hindu pagan god, 90-foot statue. I kid you not. All that and much more on this episode of Faith and Reason. Stay tuned.
This October 17th and 18th, we are going to be running Rome Life Forum in exile. We're doing that in Kansas City, Missouri. This fine bishop, Bishop Joseph Strickland, sort of in exile, is going to be joining us there, as well as Dr. Janet Smith, as well as prophecy expert Xavier Arau, and many more, including a special guest. Hope to see you there. Hope to see you there. God bless you. RomeLifeForum.com. Sign up now.
Father Charles Murr, Frank Wright, so good to be with you.
Hello again.
Always a pleasure to be with the two of you. Thank you.
Father, would you lead us off with a prayer, please?
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost, amen. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen.
That's awesome, Father. So let me start off with this. Tucker Carlson, he had a video a while back with a Dr. Casey Means and her brother. She was talking about the pharmaceutical industry and stuff like that. She was a Stanford grad doctor, just amazingly talented, and she gave it all up to basically fight big pharma and go into real health. But they got to talking, and what I wanted to point out was when they started talking about the pill, Tucker goes off and has this little monologue himself about the pill. It's fascinating. Watch this.
Can we just go to the pill really quick? And I just want to say up front that, I'm Protestant. I've never had a problem with birth control, never thought about it, but at all. So that's my position, or has been my position, which is actually radically changing as we speak. But I've always felt that way. So I never really thought about it, but I always noticed that you were not allowed to criticize the pill. Period. Like, that was not allowed in the world I grew up in. You could have all kinds of kooky opinions. You cannot criticize the birth control pill. And now I feel like maybe we were played a little bit.
He's talking about never being able to criticize the pill. That's the one thing they couldn't do. In the show, it's very interesting because they're talking about how the pill was actually the first product of the pharmaceutical industry that turned a segment of the American population into long-term customers. Instead of treating something, they were giving something to manage a condition, and it basically became the pursuit of big pharma to do that with everything, but that was the launch. But to me, what was so interesting is that Tucker here questions the pill. In fact, my wife, when she was a Protestant, she said it was one of the first signs that she knew that the pill was wrong, that contraception was wrong. And that was the first thing in her mind that went, I wonder about the Catholic faith. 4 months ago or so, I did this call out to Tucker Carlson to become a Catholic, and did a video on it. No, I didn't assume that he would watch it, of course, but would assume that hopefully many of our viewers would have prayed for his conversion, considering he was already starting to talk about it. He had that interview with Cardinal Gerhard Müller where he talked about, I'm not a Catholic, and then he said, but I'm interested. He was similarly interested in another interview this week where he was on the Sean Ryan show, and he talked specifically about Catholicism. Listen to his take on the Pope's Catholicism, but then listen to what he says about Catholics, particularly his Catholic friends.
Church leaders, not all, but a lot of them are totally corrupt. I don't know what's going on with the Pope. I'm not Catholic, so I'm not going to comment on that, but whoa. Doesn't look like Christianity to me.
It's another symbol.
On the other hand, the number of Catholics, some of my closest friends are Catholic, a lot of my closest friends are Catholic, they're the most fervent, sincere, on-target Christians I know. I'm just saying that. They are. I mean, I'm sorry. Maybe their theology is wrong. I don't know. It's not up for me to judge, but they are serious Christians and they mean it, and their life is bearing the fruit of those beliefs. In other words, as the church, like the structure collapses, some of the members of the church seem even stronger.
What struck me when I heard that, first of all, I always have a half a smile on my face when I'm listening to Tucker Carlson. I love it. I love listening to his commentaries because they're fresh, they're exciting, and they're coming from a different direction than anybody else's. They really are. He's never been establishment. He's never been Washington establishment, yet he's in Washington. So he's got a good take on things. And he sees reality, I think, I was going to say in a very real way. Yes, it's not colored, it's not tainted. He also does something that occurred to me years ago. I must have heard this from a moral theologian, perhaps even from a doctor, could have been. But he talks about the pill as, first of all, you could not question it. I like that very much. You could not question it. If you questioned it, you were shut up, you were shut down. That was it. It was here to stay. It was now a new fabric of our life. That was it. But he also pointed out something that I had heard, and I say from a moral theologian or a physician or both, that all of a sudden women were being treated, or pregnancy was being treated as a sort of disease, as a sort of, there's something wrong with you. To cancel or postpone women's menstrual periods was seen as no big deal, no problem. When that struck everybody at the time, I was born in the 1950s, and in the 1960s, this really came to a head, and it was discussed openly. And I remember being part of those discussions, even in high school, thinking, why in the world would they be treating something so natural? They would unnaturally. Why would you shut that down? Why would you frustrate a woman's natural cycle and think that nothing is going to happen wrong from that? That there would be no consequences from that. And that's what Tucker brought up. I had not heard that for years. I had not heard that observation. And the way he said it was very impressive, because they seemed to agree quite readily with him. And I think this is the first time in years that I had heard that same argument brought up, and all of a sudden, it made sense. The way he presented it, it made sense that there's something very wrong here. We always knew that there was something wrong with artificial contraception. And I repeat, I always say artificial contraception because it's frustrating nature. And the point that pregnancy in itself is almost treated today in Western society as a disease. And it's to be avoided. It's incredible how far we've gotten away from the nature of things. I was going to say the natural law, but let's not go there. Let's just say the nature of things, right? And we're frustrating an awful lot of things. I think Tucker brought that out beautifully. And in just a few sentences, he didn't go on and on like I just did.
Frank, your take.
Well, it's interesting that obviously the idea is said you can't touch abortion. Why is that? It's because it's being made identical in the minds of women with their own liberation and their rights. Now, you can't touch it because it seems to be personalized as an assault upon your rights. But I think the time is coming where it would be perfectly acceptable in the political mainstream to question the entire rights-based and liberationist agenda. Women are finding out now, increasing numbers of women are finding out that the pill isn't a liberating pharmaceutical innovation. In fact, it's a nightmare. Many of them complain of periodic and persistent mental illness, mood swings, depression, and a whole manner of hormone disruption disorders. It is an endocrine disruptor. You are taking a drug that disrupts your mood, your metabolism, your sleep, everything. In fact, it replaces your personality. And there's been books published on this by feminists talking about the dark side of the pill. In addition to this, the whole liberation narrative itself is beginning to fall apart. what women have been liberated from, as Father pointed out, is not just the disease of conception, but the disease of the family and the disease of womanhood itself. Feminism has liberated women from womanhood. And what has it left them? Concomitant with the acceptance and distribution of this technological advance, which replaced morality with bioethics, what happened alongside this was that women entered the workforce in large number. Effectively, since the 1970s, this has resulted in the abolition of the single income household. This is a war on the family, because as the workforce doubled, wages halved. Alongside the introduction of the contraceptive pill, birth rates plummeted in the West. It's resulted in not only in what you might call national suicide, but in the inability of households to support themselves with a single income, and therefore making children not only chemically disposable, but also unaffordable. And I think that entire political paradigm has now been seen. People who've lived their entire lives under it have seen how unrewarding and annihilating it is. It's not liberation, it's annihilation. And I think the time is coming where you can touch abortion in that sense, because behind it is this belief in progress, this myth of liberation, which has delivered nothing but nothingness and mental illness to boot.
I remember being in high school, and I remember almost the first time I think that I ever heard the word or term abortion. Maybe it was 15 or 16, and we were discussing these issues. And as in many things, we almost had a debate, pro and contra. And I remember one of the pro pills argument was, and it was a promise. I mean, they were quoting everybody in authority on this fact. The pill would eliminate all abortions. There would never be another abortion because the pill was going to take care of that. It was incredible because they were presenting abortion as an evil and the pill as a good that was going to prevent that evil from happening. And I remember saying, no, there's something here that's not making sense. Not making sense. And of course, it doesn't. They lead to one another. The pill leads to all of that. The contraceptive mentality is itself the problem. But I remember distinctly that being proposed as one of the positive, the most magnificent thing about the pill, that it would eliminate abortion, because at that time, abortion was abhorrent. Absolutely abhorrent. Oh my God. And it was, I think it was the first time, also, it might have been one of the first times, certainly, that I'd heard of abortion. That it was presented to us that a woman or a husband and the wife could actually end a pregnancy. I thought that was incredible.
Yeah, one of the greatest horrors of that scene is that the pill itself is abortifacient. One of the ways of its action, including it slows the motility of the sperm. If that doesn't work, it actually decreases the release of the ova. If that doesn't work, but there are such things, they call them breakthrough ovulations. So even though it's supposed to prevent ovulation, they have breakthrough ovulations. They have these pregnancies, therefore, but they're pregnancies in that the sperm and the egg meet, and there's a new child, but the other action, the third action, if you will, of the pill is to weaken the lining of the endometrium, and therefore you have an abortion. So here you are, all these unwitting women for the last, 70 years have been aborting their kids without knowing it. It's an absolute horror. But so it's almost, isn't it ironic? There you were arguing about it in the beginning, and they're saying it's going to eliminate abortion when it's causing untold numbers of abortions.
But I mean, if you want to shift the debate from the rights-based paradigm, which I think is collapsing more broadly anyway, for reasons I've just explained, the fact that it's a hormone disruptor and it results in widespread environmental pollution, which is altering the life cycles of amphibians and so on. These have demonstrated second-order effects. And the first-order effects are you are ingesting a pollutant, which disrupts your own endocrinology. Many women take extreme care to go to spa days and to look after themselves and to eat whole foods, but they'll think nothing of ingesting a chemical that periodically disrupts their entire biology and basically changes their personality chemically, permanently, for as long as you take it. So this, I think, is a line of argument that has not been pursued, and it could be in a time of increasing environmental consciousness when many men and women are willing to speak up about xenestrogens in the environment, this is one that you're ingesting yourself voluntarily. And the results are far from harmless. Aside from the abortifacient effect and the contraceptive effect, what it does to your mind and to your body is certainly not beneficial in the main.
Indeed. I wanted to get back to what Tucker was talking about when he was talking about his Catholic friends, the Catholic Witness, which is great, but his commentary on the Pope. So part of that interview also talked about the Pope, and they were pretty blunt. Now, they said something that's not quite the case, but I think they can be forgiven, and Father, you might correct me, for going down this way. So the interviewer, Sean Ryan, he basically said, Pope Francis supports gay marriage. I think, though, in terms of the public view, you can say that. Because, yes, there's nuances inside Catholic thought, and Michael Lofton will be the first one to, tell us, oh, he didn't. But the problem is, for the mainstream media, sorry, everybody gets it. Pope Francis supports LGBT. He's rah-rah with the gay couple blessings. He's supported James Martin, who's all about, kissing your same-sex partner in church. Sorry, it just, the public's got the message. And so here are these two commentators talking about, the Pope's on about gay marriage, all about gay marriage. And then Tucker responds, I'm Protestant, so I'm not going to say anything about the Pope, but it doesn't seem very Christian to me. It is stunning commentary. I think it brings to life a reality that a lot of us Catholics who are caught in the minutiae don't see. But I think the message from Rome is being broadcast loud and clear, whether or not, those who want to split hairs care to say, oh, no, he didn't. I don't know. Your take, Father.
Well, no, he didn't say it specifically because we have a pope who is very comfortable in ambiguity, in ambiguous language and ambiguous thought and ambiguous everything. So he doesn't come out and say things clearly, but by not saying things clearly, he clearly says them. I'm telling you, that's it. And the perception that the media has and that the world has of his stance on a lot of things is rather real, especially when he doesn't come out and say, no, that's not it. He doesn't clarify anything at all. So that lack of clarification, we take that as almost an admittance of guilt. If we were talking about a guilty party, somebody who's been falsely accused says, no, I didn't do that. Well, there's silence. And that silence is, that's a problem. It's a problem for all of us because it sort of means, and yes, I agree with that, and I'm just not talking. So there's a real point there. As far as Tucker is concerned, I told you I so enjoy him and his point of view that when I see him or hear him saying something like that, making a statement, I respect that, and it's coming from a thought process, a real serious one, and it's coming also from a lot of good friends that he has, some of whom live in and around Washington D.C. are very serious Catholics. They're very serious Catholics, and he gets a lot of feedback from them. I know he does. So this is not just his thought. This is also coming from Catholics who are agreeing with him. Reinforcing his thoughts. So anyway, yes.
To be fair, especially to the Catholics in America, it is the impression Pope Francis left. If you remember when he came in 2015, Archbishop Vigano brought to him Kim Davis, who was all sorts of famous because she refused to sign the same-sex marriage certificates as county clerk, and she was arrested for that. She was put in jail, despite the fact she had 4 kids, all because she would live up to her faith and not put her name to same-sex marriage certificates, even though she was the county clerk. And so, Vigano brings her in to see the Pope because she's a great hero. Yes, she's not Catholic, but she's evangelical. And what does Pope Francis do? Doesn't let her take photos. Afterwards complains, to one of his friends that he says, in fact, I can't believe Vigano brought her to me, and that he fired Vigano for that reason. When the Vatican was asked by the media, hey, did you meet with this, this anti-gay marriage bigot? No, that was not a real meeting. This is a Vatican press release talking about it's not a real meeting that the Pope had. The only real meeting he had was with his former student and his family. And if you remember that meeting, that was with the gay married student and his lover. So I could totally forgive mainstream Catholics, particularly in America, where the Pope has really shoved it under their nose, for thinking Pope Francis is all about gay marriage, even though you could say in specifics he hasn't quite said so.
Well, it's difficult to dislike Tucker Carlson, and I've tried to mimic his puzzled Labrador face, and I'm going to try and do it now. Because he's a likable person. He appears to be sincere and candid.
His puzzled Labrador.
Yes. He looks like a quizzical Labrador, doesn't he? Like it's as if, like, where's my ball? You feel like you're mistreating him if you don't indulge him a little bit. But he's a very difficult man to dislike, in my opinion. So good fellow to bring it up, and I think his position is reasonable because, well, the way to see it is obviously that what the Vatican says is ambiguous, but what the Catholic faith says isn't, and there's the problem.
Indeed. Well, for all those Catholics who are close to Tucker Carlson and showing him such a good example, good on you. God bless you. We at LifeSite continue to pray every day for Tucker's entrance into the Catholic Church, because I think it'll be super. Let's talk about Bishop Strickland, because he released a bombshell of a statement the other day. It is a prayerful, considered statement. It's one in his series of letters that he's been writing to the faithful, not only in his diocese, former diocese now, not even only to the United States, but around the world. He addresses in there often priests and bishops and the Pope as well, but calling to conversion. But this message, this was so stunning, because some of the things he said in here were just unreal. He basically warned of apostasy at the top of the church from Pope Francis. He points to Pope Francis talking about this equality of all religions and stuff like this, and saying how dangerous this is. But then he quotes what's known about the third secret of Fatima. He doubts the full secret was released, as many people do, as many Fatima experts do. He quotes Cardinal Chiappi. So Cardinal Chiappi was an advisor to 5 different popes. He talked about the third secret as containing a warning that apostasy in the church is going to start at the top. That's very scary. It's also, he quotes in there, Padre Pio. Padre Pio, of course, the great mystic who died in 68 and was most famous for having the stigmata and all sorts of miracles attached to him, especially after 1960. You'd see giving into a false church. These are stunning warnings. Bishop Strickland also says he doesn't think that the Fatima consecration was done exactly as Our Lady requested. He's saying a lot of things, but he's pointing to this apostasy at the top of the church, which I think is evident for anybody who's paying any attention. It reminded me of number 675 in the 92 Catechism that talked about, in the end, there will be a religious deception that comes over the world that people will latch onto at the expense of the truth. And I just thought it was a stunning letter. I don't know if you had a chance to see it, Father.
Yeah, it was stunning. Yes, I did. And I read it. I read it carefully. And I have great respect for Bishop Strickland. Much. I think he's a fine man, an outstanding bishop, and a man of God. I really believe that. I want to tell you, I want to add on to what he said. And this is from a different source, but I think it's very supportive of the statement that he made. You know that I wrote a book called The Godmother on Mother Pasqualina, right? And they were in that book are conversations with Mother Pasqualina. One of the conversations that I had with her was about an apparition that Pius XII in 1954. This is a private vision, a private apparition. You can believe it, you can not believe it. It doesn't matter. She believed it. The Pope told her all about it. He was walking in the Vatican gardens and just froze. And he told her later, when he came back into the apostolic palace, that he was graced with a vision of the dancing sun of Fatima. What happened in Fatima in 1917, he saw. It was repeated for him. And I'm listening to this, And she was telling it, with the enthusiasm. This is an old woman now. She's about 78, and not so old, but about 78 or almost 80. And she's telling it with the enthusiasm of almost of a young girl excited about something. She relived it. And she said he was so excited to tell, and he went into detail about the whole vision that he just experienced. And she said, I asked him, did you see the Blessed Mother? Did she appear to you? Did she say something to you? Was there any message? And the Holy Father, Pope Pius XII, said, only one word came to him. Now, how it came to him, I don't know. Did somebody say it? Was apostasy. Right now, Mother Pasqualina told me this herself. She said, after he told me that, she said, I was a little bit embarrassed because I wasn't exactly sure what apostasy meant. Right? Well, who talked about apostasy in the 1950s? Are you kidding? All we were doing was building. We were just building because we couldn't contain all of the religious vocations we had, the seminaries, the schools, everything was building. Apostasy was the last thing you would hear about. But she said she went to a dictionary to look up apostasy and got the meaning of it. And she found that shocking. Shocking. And it had nothing to do with the context of the church at that time. As a matter of fact, everything was on the rise. Fulton J. converting half a million people to the Catholic faith. Everything was positive. And yet, the only thing that he took from the vision that he had of the son of Fatima, of that miracle replayed for him, he was certain, was the word apostasy. So when I read this, and I've read it from different sources later on of Padre Pio, let me say one thing also about Padre Pio for those who maybe don't know him or doubt somewhat of his importance. Pope Pius XII did nothing serious without first consulting with Padre Pio.
Wow. And maybe that's why, because in his message, Bishop Strickland quotes Pius XII, but Pius XII, before he became Pope, he says this, he says, the future Pope Pius XII, 31 years before the beginning of the Second Vatican Council, spoke these words, and I'll quote them for you. He says, I am worried by the Blessed Virgin's messages to little Lucia of Fatima. This persistence of Mary about the dangers which menace the Church is a divine warning against the suicide of altering the faith in her liturgy, her theology, and her soul. Then he said, I hear all around me innovators who wish to dismantle the sacred chapel, destroy the universal flame of the Church, reject her ornaments, make her feel remorse for her historical past. A day will come when the civilized world will deny its God, when the Church will doubt as Peter doubted. She will be tempted to believe that man has become God. In our churches, Christians will search in vain for the red lamp where God awaits them. Like Mary Magdalene weeping before the empty tomb, they will ask, where have they taken him?
I wanted to mention those things. Take them into account when you read Bishop Strickland. And if you think that he's off base, just remember those two things. The apparition of Pius XII, the apparition that he received in the Vatican Gardens in 1954. And the only word that came through was apostasy. And also that the Holy Father, Pius XII, did nothing serious, including the dogma of the Assumption. He asked Padre Pio, not only took into account the bishops of the world's opinion, but he specifically asked Padre Pio his thoughts on that matter and his vote on that matter. So it was serious. These are serious considerations, and I think what Bishop Strickland is writing is true.
Yeah, well, on the nature of apostasy, it's from the Greek words apostasis, meaning being far away or furthest away, in this case from God. And Bishop Strickland's letter charges that to our political system, as he says, the Vatican and influential organizations around the world, which he says are directed by no less than the hand of Satan, the Prince of Darkness. It's an extremely serious charge, but it's one that I make myself and various other commentators, obviously Archbishop Vigano as well, have pointed out that the spiritual crisis and the political crisis are one and the same, and they reduce to the actions of Satan. He says our national political system, the Vatican, and too many influential organizations around the world are engaged in a program that is nothing short of the 21st century betrayal of Jesus Christ and his church. Like the betrayal of Judas Iscariot almost 2,000 years ago, this present-day betrayal is emanating even from those at the very heart of the church and the state. He ends this paragraph by saying, we must acknowledge that one evil hand is moving all of these disparate forces, and that it is no less than the hand of Satan, the Prince of Darkness. And these are extremely strong words. But in my summary of the history of the liberal idea, and also of the existence of what you would call ideological bureaucracies, including the church, whose chief function appears to be to use their vestigial integrity, if you like, their social power, to promote a global agenda that is nothing short of a death cult. It is difficult to dismiss Strickland's analysis in the political or theological realm. I agree with him entirely. And I think this is an extremely important document. And I think it should be taken extremely seriously because it describes most accurately the omni-crisis we inhabit, which is an attack on our very civilization itself. And I would like to stress that Western civilization was founded by the Catholic Church between the 9th and 12th centuries. And it is this foundation that this system seeks to destroy.
We have another very, very serious thing that happened this week, and that is this back and forth with Trump over abortion. So there's a huge debate going on right now in America because, for instance, Lila Rose has called out President Trump in very stark terms, as have we at LifeSite, but she's getting bashed by all sorts of people, Catholics included. And I don't think any pro-life activist who is so shocked by what Trump said, and I'm going to get to that in a second, is saying, oh, you have to vote for this candidate or not this. That's not what it's about. But the shock to see where the Republicans have gone is what's going on. And if we're not willing to call it out, this is going to mean trouble. And it's very serious. So first of all, this week, Trump let go on Truth Social that his administration, and I quote, will be great for women and their reproductive rights, end quote. Now, you could say, well, that's shtick for abortion. But you could say, hey, reproductive rights, that's good. You're talking about right for a woman to be able to get pregnant, like in some places they're restricted from, or something like that. Okay, not okay, because it was made clear by J.D. Vance, who is so sad. He's supposed to be a Catholic convert, but he just said the most horrific stuff. And I want you to listen to it for yourself.
Abortion. Sure. Democrats made the case this week and beyond this week that Donald Trump, if elected, will impose a federal ban on abortion if he wins. Now, Donald Trump says he won't. But can you commit, Senator, sitting right here with me today, that if you and Donald Trump are elected, that you will not impose a federal ban on abortion?
I can absolutely commit that, Kristen. And Donald Trump has been as clear about that as possible. I think it's important to step back and say, what has Donald Trump actually said on the abortion question, and how is it different from what Kamala Harris and the Democrats have said? Donald Trump wants to end this culture war over this particular topic. If California wants to have a different abortion policy from Ohio, then Ohio has to respect California and California has to respect Ohio. Donald Trump's view is that we want the individual states and their individual cultures and their unique political sensibilities to make these decisions because we don't want to have a nonstop federal conflict over this issue. The federal government ought to be focused on getting food prices down, getting housing prices down, issues, of course, where Kamala Harris has been a total disaster. So I think Donald Trump is right. We want the federal government to focus on these big economic and immigration questions. Let the states figure out their own abortion policy.
And that's not it. It's just not that they are going to, or they're not supportive of a ban on abortion. They're not going to oppose that. They're not going to impose that. It gets much worse. Watch this. He says that Trump would veto an abortion ban. Listen.
If such a piece of legislation landed on Donald Trump's desk, would he veto it?
Well, I think he'd be very clear he would not support it. I mean, he said that explicitly.
It?
Yeah, I mean, if you're not supporting it as the President of the United States, you fundamentally have to veto it.
So he would veto a federal abortion ban?
I think he would. He said that explicitly, that he would.
This is absolutely terrible. It's sad as anything. But I wanted, Father, you to give us, what are we to do? I mean, the U.S. situation is there's two candidates for president. You've got one and the other. They're both obviously now pro-abortion, but there's a difference still. How are Catholics to determine what they're to do? A lot of Catholics, or Christians, pro-lifers anyways, are going to think to themselves, why would I even bother going to vote? What's your advice for them, Father?
No, you have to vote. You have to vote. It's like the people who are writing me daily. They want to leave the Catholic Church because of all of the chaos and Rome's position on this and that. No, you can't. Don't leave. You stay in. The problem that we have, according to me, is with the Republican Party. It is not the Republican Party. There's a division in the Republican Party, and it's a strong one. There are two different parties in the Republican Party. One is pro-life, one is not. And they're very much opposed to each other. This is the difficulty that the Republicans have had for an awful long time. This has been going on for decades. I've got to say this on a personal note, and I should say I don't mean him any personal harm by saying it. As a matter of fact, I would say it in the spirit of an invitation to Vice Presidential candidate Vance. Whoever gave him instruction in the Catholic faith, I think maybe he missed a couple of the RCIA lessons. I don't know what it was, but I don't believe that it was absolutely a good instruction in the faith. Every once in a while he says things that are they're very strange for a new convert, because a new convert is full of zeal, usually. So in my experience anyway. A new convert is almost more Catholic than the Pope, as we used to say, which it doesn't have the same impact today. I'm sorry.
J.D. Vance is certainly more Catholic than the Pope, even if even his most bizarre transports.
I have quite a number of people I know.
I'd probably say that statue of Hanuman is more Catholic than the Pope as well, to be honest. I put a bet on that, if you like.
Well, you've got a major point, yes. You're right. But the point is
that joke isn't funny anymore, folks.
No, it's not funny. I'm laughing because it's not funny. Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. But the point is that usually a convert to the faith, a new convert, is more zealous to defend the faith. I think this, from what I've heard of Vance, and he said a few things like this. He doesn't seem to get it. It's concerning to me. It's concerning to me, and I would really invite him to find a good priest, seriously to sit down with and discuss some moral matters. There is also a time that's on the religious level. On a political level, and I don't pretend to be a politician, though we're all of us a little bit of a politician. There are times not to speak. There are times to shut up. There are times not to say things and make things worse. And I don't think that he knows that either. That somebody needs to sit down with him. He's a good man. I'm not saying that. I really am impressed with his goodness. I think he's a good man. But I think that he's unaware of a few things, and somebody should really sit down with him and explain a few things so that he gets things clear. If he's clear on matters and then goes off and says what he wants to say, and they're of this ilk, well, that's another thing. But I don't think he's clear. It's clear within him. I don't think he's got it together. He's not asking me for forgiveness, but I do forgive him anyway, a little bit. But I wish he would get some clarification, some help on these matters.
Catholicism is essentialist. It's essentialist in the fact that it asserts that the essence of reality and its ultimate source is God. And its argument for life isn't attributed. They're not verbal arguments which are subject to change, as liberals and the Rawlsian and Peter Singer system do. It's essential. There is an essential and inalterable value to human life, and this is a simple and basic principle. And if you violate that, then that's basically a violation of the Catholic doctrine. It's essentialist. It means you can't change it. It doesn't matter what your opinions are. It doesn't matter whether you like the people or whether you think it's convenient or anything like that. So it's simply inalterable. I mean, Edward Fraser makes that a good point. And he also says that, because Edward Fraser is a very good theologian, he's a Thomist, wrote a very good book about Aquinas. He said that, of course, there are political expediency arguments, but these measures exceed even those. It is a dreadful thing to do. I mean, of course, Vance himself has approved, I think, very recently, mifepristone, the over-the-counter abortifacient as well. There was no need for him to do this. Now, I mean, I suppose on the side of the political expediency argument, you could point out that almost half, if not half, the states of the United States have now either banned abortion or taken steps to restrict it extremely severely. So the overturning of Roe v. Wade was a step in a very good direction towards delegitimizing the routine and convenient murder of unborn children. It is regrettable that these softening remarks have been made, if that's what they are. But I think Father Murr is right to show that Vance's Catholic formation is questionable at best, especially on this issue. I'd agree that he does seem to have some very good instincts, and his opposition to the international industry of death that is the permanent war business of regime change is extremely encouraging. But this isn't. And if we don't speak for life, no one else will. It's important that these people are held to account and that they are told to remember that life has an essential value and it doesn't change according to political expedience.
So the United States is really under pressure now, and you see it in all sorts of ways. But this week we saw a very strange thing. We saw a 90-foot tall statue. Just check this out. 90-foot tall statue of the monkey-headed Hindu god Lord Hanuman, erected, of all places, in Texas. It unseated Our Lady of the Rockies as the third largest statue in the United States. So you went from a statue of Our Lady, the Blessed Mother of Jesus, to Hanuman, a false god of the Hindus. Pagan symbol dubbed State of the Union was unveiled at a temple in Sugar Land on the outskirts of Houston during a Prana Prathista ceremony from August 15th to the 18th. So unbelievably, it gets unveiled on the feast day of Our Lady of the Assumption, of Our Lady. So, yeah. It's a sad thing. I want to give an answer to that because LifeSite has a big thing going around the United States. In 3 cities so far, we've got up huge posters. They look something like this. Just beautiful, huge poster. Christ is King. The verse on the poster is from 1 Timothy, the blessed and only mighty, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. It's what we need to do. If you want to support LifeSite in putting up those posters all around the United States, please go to donate at the top right-hand side of the page. And in your note on your donation, please note that you want to see those billboards going up all over the United States. And we intend to do that in hundreds and hundreds of cities around the United States. This statue thing, very disturbing, but I think, unfortunately, a reflection of actually what's going on in the U.S. as well, Father.
Yeah, it's well. Again, we go back to Chesterton's quote. I quote Chesterton on this. When you cease to believe in God, you believe in anything. In the United States of America, where we once were very proud of a Judeo-Christian common culture, religious and secular, religious and civil. We no longer have that. I would go back to something. I would go to something else that with people who are, if they're not shocked about this, or if they are, I would remind people. I've gone into an awful lot of Catholic homes and find statues of Buddha everywhere, statues of this, of that, of all of these idols they're using for artwork. I would remind people that none of those belong in your home. They don't belong in a Catholic home. They do not belong in a Catholic home. They have no business there. Art or no art, it's not art. It's not art. And it's I'm sure that people are not adoring these images. As a matter of fact, most people who have statues of Buddha don't even know who Buddha was or what he's all about. However, they do not belong in a Catholic home. It's funny. I've gone into a lot of shops and seen statues of Buddha for sale. And I always make a point of asking the manager, do you have a crucifix for sale? Is there a statue of the Blessed Virgin Mary for sale? Well, no, we don't handle religious articles. You don't. What is this? What is that? I would ask all of us to be a little bit more aware of the little idols that we're collecting. We can go into the spiritual idols on another time, but it's disturbing that this is happening culturally. It's disturbing that it's becoming part of our art form. I go into many Catholic homes. I see no crucifix in any room. I see no painting of the Madonna or a statue of the Blessed Mother. Nothing. But there's Buddha and there's this, and oftentimes there are Indian and Pakistani godheads. These are not part of who we are, and they have no part in our homes. They certainly have no place in our homes or hearts.
There is a video of President Obama showing a little girl how he has the Hanuman statue in his pocket and he keeps it there and it provides him solace and stuff when he's doing things. Let's remind everybody of that video. Watch.
And I got, this is a Hindu little statuette of the monkey god Hanuman that a woman gave me.
By the way, if anybody's wondering if that was fake, is that AI? No, it's not. You can look it up, actually. It was reported January 16, 2016 in the Hindu Times. Obama always carries Hanuman statuette in pocket. This is a thing. This is a false god. It's also got its sights on the United States, having been promoted by the former president and now in this huge statue. Father, my understanding is that these so-called fake statues are also real devils. Is that the understanding of the church?
Well, yes. If you've got in your home a statue of the Blessed Mother or a painting of the Blessed Mother, it's for devotion. You've got to understand what the Catholic Church is, and if you accept the Catholic Church as the true church, true religion, and all others as false. I do. I don't dislike people or hate people because of it, who adhere to those beliefs. But they are false. And to have anything that would be false in your life, and to have some affection for it, whatever it is wrong. It's wrong. The problem that we have is that we've bought into this whole idea that all religions are the same. This is the problem. This is really the problem of it.
But after a century of mass media deception directed by liberal governments, people can be forgiven for not noticing the obvious. But there's a very good reason why all the Hindu gods look like demons, and that's because they are. Now, in the case of Hanuman, if you go for the archetypal theory, Hanuman is a monkey. He's a trickster god. Now, if you look at that kind of analysis of pagan religions, you can see that this archetype, this particular type of god, is a kind of playful but also malicious deceiver. We're basically celebrated for these aspects. What these god forms do, as it were, these demonic idols, is that they celebrate base aspects of human nature and elevate them to the level of divinity. So people can reflect upon their own deceitful nature, upon the trickery that they practice upon themselves and upon others, and they can see themselves reflected in an idol and feel good about it. So that is the purpose of these archetypes. Each of the Hindu gods appeals to different aspects of, shall we say, base humanity. And it elevates them to the level of divinity. It sanctifies the profane, and that is the function of most pagan idolatry. As for the Buddha, you would think that women would have been sick by now of following fat men who are smugly preaching the doctrine of wisdom of self-annihilation. But no, apparently not. So you find them all over the place. I mean, I went on holiday by mistake to Cornwall, unfortunately, the other week. And as I was driving there, I passed one of these artists by the roadside, but didn't have time to get out and behead it. I shall have to make time for that in the future.
Now, I promise we're going to get to some good news at the end. I just wanted to give you a few of the items that happened last week that were just so crazy. Telegram founder and CEO Pavel Durov was arrested on Saturday at a French airport as part of an investigation into a lack of moderation on the popular social media platform, which is known for opposing censorship and protecting its users' privacy, called Telegram. Frank, you want to jump in on that?
Yes, it's part of, and has been seen by other commentators such as Mike Benz and so on, as a wider attack on speech generally worldwide. And people may not be aware that the recent cri de coeur of Mark Zuckerberg admitting that he was wrong to suppress information over the COVID narrative, to promote the COVID narrative of lockdowns and so-called vaccines, and to suppress Hunter Biden's laptop. This obscures the fact that Facebook has been a deep state asset since day one, is simply a continuation of a deep state DARPA project called LifeLog, whose creator at DARPA said that Facebook was simply a private government project for mass surveillance. So this is an ongoing attempt to control the narrative. As people like Alistair Crook have said, the entire Western liberal Zionist order is a kind of mind manufacturing. And what it does is it seeks to mold public opinion. It can only do this if it controls every form of mass media. Now, the French satirical magazine Le Canard Enchaîné has reported that Durov was invited personally to France by Emmanuel Macron himself. So he was invited to a dinner and honey-trapped by the no longer legally ruler of France, the no longer legitimate ruler of France, you might say. He's been delegitimized by 2 successive election defeats. And he decides to extend a personal invitation to the owner of Telegram, who is being prosecuted, I believe, for charges on harboring images and networks that produce, I suppose, criminal activity, including child prostitution or child pornography. Now, this could be leveled at practically any social media network, but because this one isn't owned by the deep state, they're going for him.
We also have in the United States, a federal judge has ruled that a school that is not wanting to, but must allow a 15-year-old boy to join a girls' soccer practice. Judge Landia McCafferty ruled that 15-year-old boy identified as Parker Terrell must be allowed to join his high school's female soccer team, despite a New Hampshire law meant to limit female sports to actual girls and women. In other crazy news this week, we also had a Christian doctor in Germany receiving a 2,500 euro fine for warning about COVID jab dangers in 2021. Dr. Heidi Güldner declared that she was stunned by the decision from the State Medical Association, which instead of standing behind doctors and supporting them in the exercise of their oath, stabbed them in the back. And in Canada, a judge has found a Canadian pastor guilty of criminal harassment for protesting drag queen story hours, targeting children, with the drag queen story hours targeted children at a public library earlier this year. And the pastor, for protesting them, has been charged with criminal harassment. He told LifeSite News, a judge found me guilty today of criminal harassment for expressing my opposition toward Drag Queen Story Hour to a library manager set on hosting the event for posting the video of our conversation on Facebook and saying we'll be back to protest if the event continues. And do you remember the Benedictine nuns who criticized Harrison Butker when he gave his oh-so-famous, awesomely Catholic speech at their school? Well, guess what? Those Benedictine nuns who criticized Harrison Butker's, that viral pro-life, pro-marriage speech, now they've got themselves media attention for investing in companies to push their own leftist policies. A report published in The Independent and the Associated Press described the investment of these Benedictine nuns as activism that the Sisters of St. Scholastica engage in. And I quote from the report, "They invest what little they have in corporations that match their religious ideals, but also keep a bit in some that don't, so they can push those companies to change policies they view as harmful." And what are those? Are those policies against, bashing the church or persecution of Christians or to keep life and family centered on Christian values? Nope. The sisters propose resolutions as shareholders on major companies. According to Stanley, they called on Netflix to ensure non-discrimination and diversity on its board. The report, by the way, makes no mention of the nuns condemning Netflix's promotion of satanic and pedophilic movies. So, to get to the good news, the Shroud of Turin, I did a show on it just a couple of weeks ago, and it's back in the news because an AI-generated image from the Shroud went totally viral. Take a look at this image, and it comes from an AI sort of working on the Shroud of Turin and coming up with this. There's some controversy from people about what it is, what it means, how legit it is, or whatever, but it did go super, super viral. 13 million views, I believe that was in one day. And it was sort of a mistake. It's a resurfaced study that gave rise to these AI images from 2022. And one of the major newspapers reported it again as if new news, which happens every once in a while nowadays. But it did give way to 13 million viewers in one day seeing this AI image from the shroud. So I thought that was great. And also some good news from Iowa. Iowa Supreme Court has ruled that there is no constitutional right to abortion, and it's upheld the heartbeat law. The Iowa Supreme Court Judge Matthew McDermott stated that there is no constitutional right to abortion in the state, and consequently, quote, the fetal heartbeat statute is rationally related to the state's legitimate interest in protecting unborn life, end quote. And finally, a federal court has backed a Christian teacher who refused to call kids by their transgender identity. U.S. District Court Judge Pamela Baker ruled that an Ohio school district violated Vivian Garrity's constitutional rights to freedom of speech and religion under the First Amendment by trying to force her to accommodate two students' requests to be addressed by opposite-sex gender identities. And there you have it. See, there's still some good news in the world, principally the good news that Jesus Christ is king, and in the end, the triumph of his Immaculate Mother will happen, as she promised at Fatima. Any final thoughts, Frank, before we give it over to Father for his final blessing?
Well, it's wonderful to see technology for once being used for good, and to put the face of God before at least 13 million people in one day is marvelous. I thought that was a wonderful image. I treasured it myself, to be honest.
Father, last comment and final blessing, if you would please.
No, I was very impressed with the studies, the new studies that came out of the shroud, also giving it 20 centuries of age, rather than some forgery from the 14th century, or 13th or 14th century. They're actually able now with testing to bring it back 20 centuries, so that it would have been. It's even more probable. I always believed that it was the shroud of our Lord. It wasn't a problem to me. Even when in 1984, they came out with the study saying, no, it was from the 14th century. I said, no. I didn't buy it. Looking at the history of it. Well, finally, the science came out and is proving that is. And I think it's proving it, I don't know, awfully fantastically well. It's proving what it is. And that the image came from it is marvelous too. Except there's one thing. I don't know that I'm so excited about seeing the actual face of Jesus. For one reason, I have one already in my head. It's already here. I have an image. And I hate it to be in battle with the reality. I think there's a reason for which the evangelists did not describe Christ. I think they purposely did not do that, or the Blessed Virgin, so that each one of us could have the perfect image of the perfect man and the perfect woman to be those two people. Anyway, but it's a marvelous, the studies that are going ahead are fantastic, and this is great.
And your blessing, please, Father.
Benedictio Dei omnipotentis, Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sanctus, descendit super vos et manet semper. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Father. Thank you, Frank. And thank you all for joining us here on Faith and Reason. We'll see you next time. Be sure to tell your friends and family about Faith and Reason. Make sure they join us here too. We'll see you next week.